So a lot of people in the diaspora don't know that they can actually get access to the Diaspora Mortgage in Ghana, right?
Home ownership is such an important part of the wealth building process, whether you live abroad or even back home. And for many diasporans, we wish, to own a piece of the motherland. But the process of building or owning a home back home can be quite difficult because if you're not careful, your money can fall into the hands of unscrupulous people who can take advantage of you. One person who's got some innovative strategies to building back home is Lorraine, and it gives me a lot of pleasure to, have this conversation with her to tell us a bit about herself and, what she does with her organization. So, thank you very much for coming, Lorraine OB. Why don't you put the OB in there? That's
It's MBE. You're promoting me already prematurely, but it's MBE.
Yeah, right. Welcome to Diaspora Careers and Investments.
Thank
and
you
tell us a bit
so
about
much.
yourself.
Thank you, firstly, for having me. Thank you for the introduction as well. And yeah, the amazing work that you're doing on your platform as well, Chad Radford. Thank you very much. So a little bit about me. I'm a British-born Ghanaian. And as you rightly put it, I'm an advocate right now for really encouraging as many diasporans as possible to try and build or buy in their motherland, right? And one of the things I've been doing for probably the last 5 years or so is really about educating people and connecting the diaspora to Ghanaian opportunities primarily, because that's where I'm from, but really around providing them with opportunity to actually just get a piece of the motherland through property, right? And I'm looking forward to today's conversation around just uncovering ways and means that people can actually do that.
First, let's start with why do you think it's such an important part? Because I live in Scotland and it's difficult buying a place here already. Why must I now make it, a part of the hassle to own a piece of the motherland?
There you go. You've hit the nail on the head, right? And I speak to a lot of diasporans who be like, I live in London, I live in Manchester, I live in Germany, US, whatever. I can't. Maybe it's a hassle or it's expensive to buy property in their host country. I love how you put it, the host country, right? So where you're living at the moment. But, when I did some comparables and I looked at, okay, how much it would cost to buy something, let's say here outside of your motherland, right? So in Western society or in the UK, for example, versus how much you can get in Ghana, and also looking at it from an income generation perspective, you can actually get more value for money in Ghana and generate more income than you could do here in the UK. I'm using that as a comparable, right? And I think it's important when it comes to, real world assets such as, property. Everybody in their lifetime should own assets such as, property. It's one of probably, aside from something like education, probably one of the only assets that are, close enough to guaranteeing you some form of appreciation, right? I'm not going to say it's guaranteed, but it's, it is one of those, assets that are, if anything, likely to hold value, if not appreciate in value.
How does, property back in Ghana, yield more than property over here? Just to mention some of the ways, because in my village, if I was to buy or build a property there and to rent out, it's incomparable to how much I would even rent out a single room over here. So
that's fair. That's fair. So let's be very specific, right? A lot of the comparables that I've done are mainly based on cities, right? So the villages, the rural areas, I understand that one is definitely not something that you can compare, right? But when it comes to Ghana right now, let me give you a couple of statistics. And I am focused primarily on Ghana, but just a couple of statistics, right? Ghana, number one, has one of the highest rental yields, probably top 5 rental yields across Africa right now, right? Number 2, it is one of the fastest growing countries on Airbnb's platform, right?
That's good.
And then when we now look at it from a city perspective, we're looking at Accra. Accra is one of the fastest growing tourist locations across Africa right now.
That's right.
Right. Now, when you look at those 3 data points, right, it all points to the fact that when people are traveling, they need somewhere to stay. Right. So now when you're looking at Accra as a city, now I'm looking at Accra primarily. Now, when you look at Accra, you compare it to the city of London, you compare it to Manchester, you compare it to Liverpool. Comparably, it has a higher yield. Now, the average yield in the UK right now is somewhere between 4 to 7%.
That's
right?
true.
That's
true.
average.
That's
Now,
true.
when you look at it across Accra, you are looking at 8 to 10%. Some people go to the extent of saying up to 20%. I like to be
I
a bit more
agree.
conservative, right?
I
But if
agree.
you look at 8 to 10%. Now, let me give you a direct comparable.
Mm.
A studio, let me understand from Scotland perspective,
Yeah.
what is typically the average cost of buying a studio apartment or a one-bed apartment? Do you know?
A good studio in the city of Glasgow would cost 130 to 150,000 pounds. A good
Okay.
studio in a good location.
It's great to know. And on average, do you know how much that would fetch on a monthly rental income perspective?
600, yeah. Or even
Okay.
700 if you push it.
I'm glad you gave me these figures. It wasn't
Yeah.
me that gave these figures.
Yeah.
Now, if we compare this to Ghana, right? A good studio in a good location is about $100,000 to $120,000,
Yeah.
right? Right. You gave me £130,000, which is probably about $150,000 or
That's right.
100. So let's compare it. Let's say $150,000 gets you a good a studio apartment in the central part of Glasgow. Now, $150,000 gets you an excellent studio apartment in the central parts of Accra.
Yeah.
Now, you just told me that you can fetch about £650 in the central part of Glasgow in terms of rental income monthly.
Yeah. Yeah.
In Accra, you can get $1,000, $1,500 up. So you can now compare that net, and you can see that you can get a better studio apartment, right, in the heart of Accra, right?
Yeah.
Let's say Glasgow is probably a second or third or fourth city out in the UK, right? Now, if
Yeah.
you look at the number one city in Ghana, you can get an excellent studio apartment for less than the price of a studio apartment in a third or fourth city in the UK and get it for higher rental yields. So that is me comparing and giving you an example of why I believe there is high potential return to people that are investing in Ghana.
Lauren, all of this sounds good. And I mean, in the past, I think a couple of months ago, I spoke to Cersei, a Ghanaian who does Airbnb. And he tells me the numbers are fantastic. Many people have reached out to me saying to tell me, Shadrach, I was raking in like $2,000 or more on Airbnb in Accra. So I have an Airbnb in Accra at the moment, and we are still growing the business. So I know that it's got the potential. But
Yeah.
how do we go about? How do I buy a place for $150,000 in Accra? Come on, you
You
are
use
rich,
someone like
so
me. This is
no,
the work
you
that
have
I
no
do.
money. Sorry.
Look, there's a couple of there are different ways and means that people can buy property, right? I appreciate that not everybody has $150,000 lying there straight, right?
That's right.
And one of the things that I provide access to is mortgage facilities to the diaspora communities, right? So a lot of people in the diaspora don't know that they can actually get access to the Diaspora Mortgage in Ghana, right? So this is somebody who is an individual who has, you could be one of two things. You could be a non-Ghanaian or you can be a Ghanaian by parentage, heritage, or citizenship, right? And that can give you access to a diaspora mortgage. Now, I admit a diaspora mortgage in Ghana is of a higher interest rate than etc. It's double digits in Ghana, right?
Okay.
But what I advocate for is if you don't have any other route to market, it is a good stepping stone. So it's a good way for you to start. And once you start to generate either the rental income or you now maybe find other ways to get access to cheaper debt facilities, you can now offset that and buy that mortgage facility out in Ghana. But if you're looking for ways to get a stepping stone, then diaspora mortgage with double-digit interest rates, we're talking between 11% up to 13.5% interest rate, up to 20 years, between 5 to 20 years, you can get access to those, and they can actually provide you with the mortgage to cover off 80% loan to value when it comes to you purchasing that property. So all you would need to do in reality, help me out with my maths here, but if we're looking at $100,000 property, for example, and you're looking to buy that, you'll need to save yourself about $20,000, right? And that $20,000 is about £15,000. Tell me in the UK what deposit you can put down with $15,000. Do you know, £15,000? So having that available and being able to save that and then using that as down payment to buy a property in Ghana. Different ways and means you can do it. And a lot of people now, some people are even coming together and buying properties together. So it means that you can put in 10K, you can put in 20K and do it together with some friends as well. So there are different ways and means that people can do that.
I think you've condensed a lot of the information with that, speech. But so the first thing is that it's a 80% loan to value loan. So with 20% deposit, and to be fair, that is lower than what you would pay here in the UK, because if you're going to rent out a place, then you need about 25%
Exactly, or
deposit.
buy to let.
So, yeah, for a
Exactly.
buy to let. So yeah,
Exactly.
yeah.
Exactly.
So it
In
is
Ghana,
lower in Ghana. Yeah.
yeah. In Ghana,
Um.
they don't. In Ghana, I've had different conversations with a lot of the mortgage companies. A lot of the diaspora mortgage companies understand and appreciate and also accept that when you're getting the diaspora mortgage, most people are more likely to actually rent it out. So it's actually
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
not considered. They don't distinguish between residential and buy to let. If that makes sense.
Yeah, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And I also like the fact that you mentioned that they allow you to offset the loan or the mortgage if you should get access to a cheaper debt. Would you have to pay any early repayment charges or whatever?
It depends on the bank. Some banks
Mm,
might require
all
you to
right.
pay. I mean, in the long run, the numbers still work out if you were to offset it, right? So it's not
Are these rates given in dollars? That's another important bit.
great question. So yes, so these rates are on the dollar. Some banks will give it to you
Mm,
on the pound, but I
mm,
think at the moment most banks are opting for the USD facility.
mm.
So giving you the chance that these 11%, 13.5% is on the US dollar, right?
Okay.
Those people that live in Ghana, they do have access to 100% financing because they
Okay.
will do some offset against, they will take the repayments at source, right? So based on your income, if you're working
Right.
on the grounds. But for those of us that don't live in the country, it's the maximum is 80% that they'll give you.
All right. What do they look at in order to qualify for, an 80% LTV loan facility in
Great
Ghana?
question. Great question. So most of the banks will, and some people don't think about this, but they do look at your credit worthiness, right? So they do look
Ooh.
at your credit history. So what they would ask for is they would ask for at least 3 months pay slips. They will ask for your employment contract. They will ask for your bank statements, about 6 months worth of bank statements, and they will ask for a credit bureau report. So whichever country you're in, I can't
Okay.
remember the name for the one in Germany, but the equivalent of what we would have is Equifax or Experian or
Right.
those credit bureau reports. They'll ask
Right.
you to print a copy of that, and you to get it authorized by a notary public or solicitor to verify that this is a true, authentic copy of your credit
That's right.
report. You take that to the bank, and they would actually do their due diligence and verify that you don't have too many liabilities. They do your affordability checks and verify that you can actually afford the mortgage.
Another question, actually. So, affordability is based on your individual circumstance.
Correct.
So, two questions. One, can I buy with a company,
Mm.
a limited company from the UK? One, and then two, does taking a mortgage in Ghana affect my credit score here in the UK?
Great question. Let me take the last one first. The last
Yeah,
one first. Dare I say it? Is no.
fantastic.
Um,
I like to
uh,
hear that.
However, it would be
Mm,
up to you to disclose that to when you are getting a facility in the UK and
yeah.
they're asking
Mm,
you for your liabilities, it is now up to you to disclose what you have globally,
okay.
right? Especially if you're in the US, when it comes to US, you've got to declare, your worldwide income and assets, etc., right? So those of you that are watching this, don't just say Lorraine said, but you need to make sure you declare
Mm,
what you need to
mm,
declare globally, right? On the first one, this does depend on the banks, because as I said, the banks normally, it is unlikely that you will be able to do it through a company.
mm,
Most banks do look at you as an individual, and if it's
mm,
not an individual, it would be as as a married couple, right?
mm.
So they look at that. Unlikely that you'll be able to do it through a company.
Yeah, but I guess whatever income that you generate from there can stay in Ghana to service the loan there, and then whatever profits.
Absolutely. That's how I definitely. So going back to your question about the company, if
Mm,
you are self-employed, then of course you are now able to say that your company employs you and provide that contract,
that's
right? So
right.
so
That's right.
that's fine. But with regards to what you've just said, I do, I think we need to be really transparent, especially when sending money from when you're repatriating funds out of the country, it's expensive, right?
Yeah.
So I do highly recommend, if you're looking to build wealth, right, keep the wealth in Ghana, right?
Yeah.
Keep the funds in Ghana, only because you're going to be subject to FX. You're going to be subject to your transaction costs when you're repatriating the money back out of the country, right?
Yeah.
But if you are the kind of person you're now looking to build, you're now looking to look at, you're traveling to Ghana, you need some money that you could, live on when you're in Ghana, or you've got projects you're building, or why not build that wealth in country? And absolutely use the rental income to service the debt whilst in country.
I think what people will be interested to know is that would the $150,000 property in Accra yield enough to cover mortgage costs? So that, because one of the things I would worry about is that if at the end of the month I'm being asked to, send some money from my meager salary over here, to go and pay a mortgage for a house I don't live in Accra.
Great question.
Is it self-sustaining? Is it sustainable?
Great question. So number one, your repayments will be totally dependent on your personal situation, right?
Right.
So your affordability. So most banks would ask for a minimum income of about £2,000 or £1,800 a month. So that is the minimum in which you would be required to prove that you earn in order to be able to even get access to the mortgage facilities in Ghana. Now, when you look at, again, I'm going to just use very, very rough figures. But if we say, for instance, if you provided 80% loan to value, you've given a 20% deposit on this $150,000 house, right? Your repayments could be approximately £700 equivalent a month, right? Now, or £600 a month. It really, really does depend. Okay. So if let's just say on average, it's somewhere between £600 to £700 a month. Okay. Your rental income is somewhere between $1,000 to $1,500 per month. So
is this an average or in a best month? Average.
I would say this is average. Say this is average. In a bad month, you're probably going to be looking at just netting off. In a real bad month, I would say at least have about £200 buffer available.
A real bad month. Yeah, I like that.
A real bad month, I would say have about £200 buffer. And the reason why I say this is because there could be times where you short for, there are some, and I'm talking from personal experience here. Okay.
I like that.
Personal experience where I've had to send over using, my Halifax account. I think you should definitely have a buffer, right? Nothing is ever guaranteed. Even in the UK, nothing is guaranteed, right? So you want to make sure that you always have that kind of buffer just in case. I remember sending myself my money from the UK to Ghana to cover off service charges. Sometimes you might want to just for the sake of making sure that you've got people coming into the property, you might potentially just lower the price to make sure you've got, the vacancy rate is low. So you want to make sure that, at sometimes that might mean me covering service charges. So in Ghana, a service charge similar to the UK is to cover something like communal areas. So if you're in an apartment block and, for example, there are lifts or there is refuse collection or there is whatever they may be, right? You want to make sure that you're able to cover off those things. The mortgage is not necessarily going to cover that. So I might need to offset it and provide that. So that's the reason why sometimes you just want to be conscious about that. However, I would say these are in the bad months. When it's really good, especially peak time in Ghana, you can charge a premium. And that premium sometimes could actually be enough for some people to actually help them to offset things later on in the year as well.
That's right. That's right. I think when I spoke to Ceci, one of the things he also said was that in the December, he can make bags which can cover him, for some parts of, some of the slow months. So I think it's the humility and even the wisdom for people not to just squander their profits in the best months and then know that there are slow times also. So I want us to be wrapping up. But let's talk about maintenance. One of the things I worry about is owning a flat in Accra, because your neighbor upstairs will be pounding fufu, you see, and be breaking your. How do you deal with these things?
Oh my gosh, maintenance in Ghana is a whole different ball game as well. So it's important that you do work with number one, that whole pounding fufu thing. That's such a good example, right? You want to be with, especially leverage a property developer where you know that you can get good property management, right?
Mm.
So that's important, because if anything, right, you want to make sure that buying a property in a space that you know there's mutual respect for the individuals are in that block,
That's good.
right? So you know that if anything, you're buying a property where those individuals potentially speak like you, look like you, are like you, to understand and appreciate that no, you can't be pounding for 4 at 3 a.m. in the morning. Do you know what I mean? Right. But I do think in Ghana there's now becoming more and more focus on property maintenance. Okay, so there are a lot of large scale property management companies that are coming up that are responsible for maintenance of property.
You are obviously knowledgeable about this, and you've been doing this for a while now. How can people reach out to you if they want to work the market with you? They need your guidance.
Excited because I have been running for this best part of this year my new property program, which is all about helping to educate people how to actually invest in property in Ghana. So if anybody's interested, use the link below, right? And you can actually find out more. And I take people through a 3-month program in order for them to be able to access property in Ghana, going through a lot about what we've spoken about in detail. But not only just those things, but connecting you to developers, connecting you to these mortgage companies, connecting you to these property management companies, connecting you to lawyers, connecting you to Lands Commission. All of these people, my black book, right? So taking people right through the process, finding the best locations. We talk about Central Accra, but what are those central locations, right? So if you click on the link below, you will have access to join my program, which is predominantly a live program with some recorded sessions as well, and hand-holding you through the process to be able to access property in Ghana.
So I think one of the things I worry also in Accra especially is people selling the same property to multiple people. Or even how can you be guaranteed that you are dealing with the right persons, and I think that's something I would certainly want to know more about. Where are the central locations? You see, because I think if I have some land in, behind Kaswa, is that good enough, to build a property to earn an income?
And some people don't know. Some people think that maybe the one in Kaswa can earn them the figures that we're talking about. The reality is it's no, right? No. But you want to be able to understand this. Okay, so what can you get in Kaswa, right? What can you get in the central locations where some people still don't, some people still don't understand or appreciate the distance of Kaswa versus the airport. So really just trying to still fundamentally understand some of these basics as well. So I take people through this journey, to the point that either they want to build or they want to buy, right? Just yesterday, we had one of my sessions with somebody from Lands Commission. This is a person that you need to have in your back pocket.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So I think these things are important.
I greatly appreciate this conversation. It's helped me on a personal level. And I think I'll be having this conversation with you, following it up, because we own a place close to Tema where we're using for Airbnb. The numbers are good, but we're having to put in a lot of money because because of the doom saw, the lights out situation. We're having to put in, whether a generator, air conditioning, solar panel. So it can make the cost of owning a place even a bit expensive. But I think you'll be a good person to have this conversation with, and I greatly appreciate the time.
Thank you so much, too. I appreciate it, Shadrach. Thank you.
If you've got value for this video, I would greatly appreciate it if you can like it and subscribe to this channel. And follow Lorraine also. I met her on Instagram, so please do follow her. She shares excellent tips. Thanks a lot, and bye for now.